Moderator, Elena Diaz. Good evening, America. I'm Elena Diaz, and tonight on Capital Clash, we're tackling one of the most divisive issues facing our nation: immigration and its impact on national security. Our guests represent the polarized, views dividing Washington and the country. On my right, Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas's 30th District, former civil rights attorney and rising progressive voice in Congress. And on my left, three-term Senator Mark Hastings from Arizona, former Border Patrol Chief and Chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. The rules tonight are simple. Each guest will have 2 minutes for opening statements. I'll then pose questions with 1-minute response times and 30-second rebuttals. Our final segment will allow direct exchanges between our guests. Senator Hastings, you've won the coin. Toss backstage. Your opening statement, please. Senator Hastings. Thank you, Elena. Americans deserve security. It's that simple. What we're witnessing at our southern border isn't immigration, it's an invasion. Last year alone, Border Patrol encountered over 2 million illegal crossings. That's the equivalent of the entire population of Nebraska simply walking into our country. Behind these numbers are dangerous realities. Fentanyl pouring across the border, killing 100,000 Americans annually. Transnational gangs establishing footholds in our communities. Human trafficking networks exploiting vulnerable migrants. The previous administration's policies created this crisis. My colleagues across the aisle speak of compassion, but there's nothing compassionate about encouraging dangerous border crossings where migrants are abused, extorted, and sometimes die in the attempt. There's nothing compassionate about overwhelmed border communities and depleted resources. We need a secure border first. Then we can discuss legal pathways. I've introduced legislation that would complete the border barrier, implement advanced surveillance technology, and double Border Patrol staffing. Without security, there can be no orderly immigration system. Elena Representative Crockett, your opening statement. Jasmine Crockett. Thank you, Elena. And thank you, Senator, for illustrating exactly why we've failed to fix our immigration system for decades. Fear-mongering and dehumanization aren't policy solutions, they're political weapons. Let's be clear about what's happening. People are fleeing violence, poverty, and climate disasters, seeking safety and opportunity. Just as generations of Americans once did. Our border isn't being invaded. It's being approached by human beings following legal procedures to request asylum, a right enshrined in both U.S. and international law. I have here Customs and Border Protection's own data showing that the vast majority of fentanyl seizures occur at legal ports of entry, transported primarily by U.S. citizens, not by migrants crossing between ports. These are inconvenient facts for those pushing a narrative of fear. America deserves an immigration system that's both secure and humane. One that processes asylum claims efficiently, creates legal pathways for workers we desperately need, and addresses root causes of migration in Central America. The comprehensive bill I've co-sponsored does exactly that, along with providing technology and personnel for smart border enforcement. We can secure our borders without surrendering our humanity. We can enforce our laws without abandoning our values. This isn't just about policy, it's about who we are as Americans. Elena, thank you both. Let's move to specific questions. Senator Hastings, your proposal includes completing a physical barrier along the entire southern border. Critics argue this would cost taxpayers billions while doing little to address the root causes of migration. How do you respond? Senator Hastings. Those critics haven't spent time on the border like I have. Physical barriers work. That's why we use them for our homes, businesses, and critical infrastructure. Where barriers have been constructed, illegal, crossings drop dramatically. It's basic security. As for cost, a one-time infrastructure investment of $25 billion pales in comparison to the $116 billion annual cost of illegal immigration to American taxpayers. That includes education, healthcare, and public services. It's fiscally responsible. The root causes argument is a distraction. America cannot fix every dysfunctional government in the hemisphere. We must secure our own nation first. Elena, Representative Crockett, your response? Jasmine Crockett. With respect, Senator, I've also spent time at the border, not just with Border Patrol, but with humanitarian workers, asylum seekers, and local communities. A medieval wall isn't just ineffective, it's symbolic of a deeply flawed approach. Terrain makes much of the border impassable already. Most drugs come through legal ports of entry. Barriers are routinely breached, and nearly half of undocumented immigrants are visa overstays, not border crossers. That $25 billion would be better invested in immigration judges, asylum officers, and modern detection technology, things that actually work. But addressing root causes isn't a distraction. It's the only long-term solution. If people have security and opportunity at home, they won't risk their lives to leave. Elena, Senator, 30-second rebuttal. Senator Hastings. Representative. Crockett's approach has been tried and failed. During the previous administration, we saw record numbers despite investments in root causes. The hard truth is that only demonstrating serious consequences for illegal entry will change the calculus for would-be migrants. We need deterrence along with enforcement. Elena. Representative Crockett, your rebuttal. Jasmine Crockett, root. Causes work takes sustained effort, not photo ops and abandoned programs. And while we invest in long-term solutions, we can create legal pathways that acknowledge economic reality. Our agricultural sector, construction industry, and healthcare systems depend on immigrant labor. Let's bring this system into the light instead of perpetuating a shadow economy. Elena. Let's shift to asylum policy. Representative Crockett, your legislation would expand processing centers in Central America and increase the number of immigration judges. Critics say this would encourage more migration. How do you respond? Jasmine Crockett. On the contrary, it would create orderly, controlled processes that discourage dangerous journeys. Right now, we have a backlog of over 1.7 million asylum cases, with people waiting years for hearings. That's not just inhumane, it's inefficient. Our bill would establish regional processing centers where asylum seekers can have their claims evaluated before reaching our border. We'd triple the number of immigration judges and asylum officers to clear the backlog. People with legitimate claims would have clear legal pathways. Those without valid claims would receive quick determinations. This approach upholds both our laws and our values. It's what America has always been, a nation of laws and a nation of immigrants. Those aren't contradictory identities, they're complementary. Elena, Senator Hastings, your response? Senator Hastings. What Representative Crockett proposes is amnesty by another name. These processing centers would become magnets for economic migrants claiming asylum to bypass normal immigration channels. Our experience shows that once paroled into the country, failed asylum seekers rarely leave. Our asylum system was designed for individuals facing persecution, not those seeking economic opportunity. Over 80% of asylum claims are ultimately denied, yet nearly all applicants remain in the country. That's not a system. It's a loophole big enough to drive a truck through. We need more expedited removal, not more processing. Those without valid claims should be promptly returned to their home countries, sending a clear message that our laws mean something. Elena. Representative Crockett, rebuttal. Jasmine Crockett. Senator, I'll remind you that seeking asylum is legal, full stop. Many claims are denied because people lack legal representation, not because they're invalid. And the notion that expedited removal, essentially deportation without due process, is the answer represents a fundamental misunderstanding of both our laws and our Constitution. Senator Hastings. No one's above the law, Representative. Elena. Senator, please respect the format. Representative Crockett has the floor. Jasmine Crockett. Due process isn't being above the law, it is the law. And if the senator is concerned about people remaining here incorrectly, he should support my provisions for more immigration judges to process cases faster. Elena, Senator, Your rebuttal. Senator Hastings. The Constitution doesn't grant the same protections to non-citizens attempting illegal entry. That's settled law. What's unsettled is why my colleagues continue advocating policies that incentivize more illegal immigration, straining our schools, hospitals, and social services while American citizens struggle. Alina. Let's move to national security implications. Senator Hastings, you've claimed that our current border situation presents a terrorist threat. What evidence supports this concern? Senator Hastings. The evidence is clear and disturbing. In the last year alone, Border Patrol has apprehended individuals on the terrorist watch list attempting to cross our southern border. Those are just the ones we caught. With identification technology limited and border personnel overwhelmed, we face a critical vulnerability. Intelligence reports confirm that terrorist organizations view our southern border as a potential entry point. They observe our policies, identify weaknesses, and adapt. This isn't speculative, it's reality. When we apprehend over 10,000 people daily, proper vetting becomes impossible. Among economic migrants and asylum seekers are those with nefarious intent. A nation that cannot control who enters, cannot protect its citizens. Alina. Representative Crockett? Jasmine Crockett. With respect, the senator's claims don't align with facts. Yes, there have been watch list encounters, about 100 last year out of millions of crossings. Context matters, and these individuals were apprehended precisely because our systems worked. The greater threat, according to our own intelligence agencies, comes from domestic terrorism and homegrown extremism. Focusing disproportionate resources on the border while underfunding these threats isn't security. It's political theater. Our bill strengthens screening technology, increases intelligence sharing with partners, and maintains robust vetting. But it does so without demonizing entire groups or undermining our values. Real security doesn't require abandoning who we are. Senator Hastings. That's a dangerous naivety. Alina. Senator, please wait for your rebuttal. Jasmine Crockett. Security and humanity aren't mutually exclusive. We can be both strong and compassionate. That's not naivety. It's the essence of American leadership. Alina, Senator, your rebuttal. Senator Hastings. It's easy to dismiss security concerns from the comfort of Washington. Border communities live with the consequences of these policies daily. And regarding domestic threats, we can address both. But an unsecured border undermines all our other security efforts. It's our most obvious vulnerability. Jasmine Crockett. The senator speaks of border communities, but many border mayors and officials support comprehensive reform, not walls. They understand that militarizing their communities doesn't make them safer or more prosperous. They want solutions, not sound bites. Alina. We now move to our direct exchange segment. For the next 10 minutes, you may question each other directly. Senator Hastings, you begin. Senator Hastings. Representative Crockett, you frequently speak about compassion. Tell me, what's compassionate about policies that encourage families to entrust their lives to cartels and smugglers? What's compassionate about the sexual assault of migrant women, the abandonment of children in the desert, or the deaths from exposure and drowning? Jasmine Crockett. Nothing about those tragedies is compassionate, Senator. That's precisely why we need legal pathways. People desperate enough to risk those journeys will come regardless of walls or threats. The question is whether we channel that migration through safe, legal processes or continue forcing people into the shadows. My question to you: what's compassionate about separating families? About keeping asylum seekers in dangerous conditions? About returning people to countries where they face persecution or death? Senator Hastings. Family separation was never the goal of any policy. It was an unfortunate consequence of enforcing our laws Parents who bring children on this dangerous journey bear responsibility for that decision. And speaking of consequences, your district has absorbed thousands of migrants. Schools overwhelmed, emergency rooms packed, housing costs soaring. How do you justify these burdens to your constituents who were already struggling? Jasmine Crockett. My constituents understand that immigrants revitalize neighborhoods, start businesses, pay taxes, and contribute culturally. The challenges we face come not from immigration itself, but from our failure to properly resource communities and reform outdated systems. Let me ask you this, Senator. Your state's agricultural industry depends heavily on immigrant labor. How do you reconcile your rhetoric with the economic reality that your state's economy would collapse without these workers? Senator Hastings. I fully support legal guest worker programs for agriculture and other sectors with legitimate needs. What I oppose is uncontrolled illegal immigration that undercuts American workers and drives down wages. You speak of contributions, but studies show the fiscal cost of low-skilled immigration exceeds tax contributions. How do you justify these costs when we have millions of Americans in poverty? Jasmine Crockett. Those studies are deeply flawed, ignoring long-term economic benefits and second-generation contributions. Immigrants founded 45% of Fortune 500 companies and are more likely to start businesses than native-born citizens. Since we're discussing economics, Senator, explain why your proposed mass deportation would cost an estimated $968 billion and shrink our GDP by over $1 trillion. Senator Hastings. Those estimates assume deportation of all undocumented immigrants overnight, which no one is proposing. We advocate for attrition through enforcement, removing incentives for illegal residents and gradually reducing the population. But let's be honest about what's happening. Your party sees potential voters, not security threats. How can Americans trust your border policies when Democratic politicians provide sanctuary, benefits, and eventually push for voting rights for non-citizens? Jasmine Crockett. That's a shameful accusation without basis, in fact. Non-citizens cannot vote in federal elections, period. This fear-mongering divides our nation and distracts from real solutions. Let me be direct, Senator. Your approach has been tried, billions spent on walls and enforcement, yet the challenges persist. What evidence suggests more of the failed same will suddenly work? Senator Hastings. It hasn't failed where fully implemented. Border sectors with completed barriers and adequate personnel show significantly reduced crossings. The failure is in the piecemeal approach and mixed messages from Washington. You speak of solutions, but your party controls the White House and Senate. Why haven't you secured the border in 4 years if you have all these supposed solutions? Jasmine Crockett. Because immigration reform requires bipartisan cooperation, which becomes impossible when one side sees political advantage in perpetuating a crisis. We've put forward multiple compromise bills that Republican leadership refused to even bring to a vote. The real question, Senator, is why your party rejected a comprehensive border security bill that included everything you claim to want. More. Agents, technology, and enforcement, simply because it also included humane processing for asylum seekers? Senator Hastings. That bill was fundamentally flawed, filled with loopholes that would have increased illegal immigration. We need enforcement first, then discussion of other reforms. Your party dismantled successful policies like Remain in Mexico and border wall construction on day one, creating this crisis. How do you justify those decisions given the chaos that followed? Jasmine Crockett. Those policies were neither legal nor successful. Remain in Mexico violated our obligations under refugee law and placed asylum seekers in dangerous conditions where many were assaulted and kidnapped. The wall was an environmental and fiscal disaster that failed to address the actual dynamics of migration. Senator, you've served in Congress for over a decade. In that time, have you ever supported comprehensive immigration reform that included both enforcement and pathways to legal status? Senator Hastings. I've supported targeted reforms where enforcement comes first. Comprehensive packages inevitably sacrifice security for amnesty, which I cannot support. But let's talk about what Americans want. Polling consistently shows security as their top immigration priority. Why does your party ignore this clear mandate? Jasmine Crockett. The same polls show over 70% of Americans support pathways to legal status for undocumented immigrants who meet certain criteria. Americans want both security and humanity, exactly what our comprehensive approach provides. The difference between us, Senator, isn't that you care about security and I don't. It's that I believe security and our values are complementary, not contradictory. We can be both a nation of laws and a nation of immigrants. Alina, we're nearing the end of our direct exchange segment. Senator Hastings, final question. Senator Hastings, Representative Crockett, would you support any immigration enforcement measure that doesn't include amnesty or expanded legal immigration? Any enforcement measure at all? Jasmine Crockett, support evidence-based enforcement that targets actual threats, smuggling networks, criminal organizations, and genuine security risks. What I won't support is performative cruelty masquerading as enforcement, like family separation or mass deportation of people who've lived peacefully here for decades. My final question, Senator, would you support any pathway to legal status for undocumented immigrants currently living and working in our communities? Any pathway at all? Senator Hastings, for certain groups like DACA recipients, I could support conditional pathways after the border is fully secured and verification systems are in place. But broader amnesty rewards lawbreaking and encourages more illegal immigration. Alina, thank you both. We now move to closing statements. Representative Crockett, you're first. Jasmine Crockett. This debate illustrates the choice before us, fear or hope. A nation turning inward in fear, or a nation confident enough in its values and strengths to remain open to the world. Immigration isn't just a policy issue, it's personal. My own family's journey, like many of yours, included both struggles and triumphs. Those experiences inform my approach to this issue, seeking solutions that are both practical and humane. The legislation I've championed represents true border security, smart technology, adequate personnel, and efficient processing that upholds our laws while respecting human dignity. It addresses the root causes of migration and creates legal pathways that recognize economic realities. America's greatness has never come from walls or fear. It comes from our ability to transform diversity into strength, to welcome the talents and energies of those who believe in our promise. We face real challenges at our border, but abandoning our character isn't how we meet them. We are capable of being both secure and compassionate, both strong and welcoming, both a nation of laws and a nation of immigrants. That balanced approach isn't just the right thing to do, it's the American thing to do. Alina. Senator Hastings, your closing statement. Senator Hastings, what we've heard tonight perfectly illustrates why immigration remains unresolved. While my colleague offers flowery rhetoric about America's character, I've focused on the practical realities facing our communities and the clear priorities of the American people. Border security isn't about fear, it's about sovereignty. Every nation has the right and obligation to control who enters and under what conditions. Without that control, we don't have a country. We have chaos. The legislation I've introduced takes a security-first approach because that's the foundation upon which all other reforms must be built. It provides the resources our Border Patrol agents desperately need. It closes loopholes being exploited by smuggling networks. And it creates consequences for illegal entry that will restore deterrence. Americans deserve security. They deserve a government that puts their interests first. They deserve leaders who recognize that compassion starts with our own citizens, struggling with impacts of uncontrolled immigration. I make no apologies for putting American security and American interests first. That's not just my position, It's my duty as a United States Senator, and I'll continue fighting for a secure border and an immigration system that works for the American people. Elena. Thank you both for a spirited and substantive debate on this critical issue. Before we conclude, I'm being told we have breaking news relevant to tonight's discussion. We're going to play a clip that's just been released and has begun circulating on social media. A screen behind them illuminates, with video footage, it shows Senator Hasting speaking privately to donors at what appears to be a fundraising event. Between us, some of these policies are theater. My donors in construction and agriculture would crucify me if we actually deported their workforce. But the base needs red meat, so we give them tough talk while making sure nothing comprehensive ever passes. It's a balancing act. Elena. Senator Hastings, would you care to respond to this video that appears to show you speaking candidly about immigration policies? Senator Hastings. That clip is clearly taken out of context. I was discussing the political realities of immigration reform, not my personal position. This is a dishonest political attack. Jasmine Crockett. Context matters, Senator. So does honesty with the American people. If we're having different conversations in private than we are in public, how can we possibly solve this issue? Senator Hastings. This is exactly the kind of gotcha politics that prevents real solutions. I won't dignify it further. Is this what your network considers journalism? Elena. Senator, CNN did not produce this video. We became aware of it when it began trending online during our broadcast. As a matter of public interest relevant to our discussion, we felt viewers should be aware. In our remaining moments, I'd ask you both, how do we move forward constructively on immigration given the deep divisions we've seen tonight? Jasmine Crockett. By having honest conversations, in public and private, about the complexities involved, by acknowledging the legitimate concerns on both sides, and by refusing to use this issue as a political weapon. Tonight's revelation isn't about politics, it's about trust. The American people deserve leaders who say the same things behind closed doors that they say on national television. Moving forward requires honesty, compromise, and moral courage. I remain ready to work with anyone committed to real solutions, including Senator Hastings. Senator Hastings. Perhaps we've all played politics with this issue for too long. There are legitimate security concerns that must be addressed. There are also economic realities we can't ignore. Representative Crockett isn't wrong that comprehensive solutions require addressing both. Elena. And on that unexpected note of potential common ground, we conclude tonight's Capital Clash. I'm Elena Diaz. Thank you for joining us.